Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We've got plenty to get into today. We're going to talk about some stuff going on around the NBA, new trade talks between the Lakers and the Pacers. We'll talk a little bit about fines getting levied out to the Golden State Warriors, what's happening there, the trade market for Mike Conley, lots of stuff for us to discuss here. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, I am now going on, what is this? A little over 24 hours of my Kevin McAllister home alone situation here, as my wife and daughter are out of town. And I'll tell you, it's not quite what I thought it would be.
It rarely is, right? It's you have a little bit of fun at first, and then you get a little bit into it, and it's kind of like, yeah, I miss them. I'm ready for them to come home.
See, I'm finding my thought was, of course, I'm going to miss them, but I'm going to be so productive. I'm going to do all this work on my studio. I'm going to do all this work on the yards. I'm going to get all of this stuff done because, I'm not going to be having to spend time like watching The Bachelorette and things like that, or playing Legos, or, some of the other stuff that takes up some of my time during the day. And don't get me wrong, obviously I love spending time with my family, but I always think, gosh, I could be so productive. But the thing that I forgot is that I have my brain. And that's a problem, because then you know what happens, Keith? Then I get up in the morning and I go to check our YouTube stats, and the next thing you know, what's this? What's this? Do I want to watch a video on every time Johnny Lawrence says the phrase badass in Cobra Kai? Yes, I do. Next thing you know, I've watched 3 full episodes of Cobra Kai, all that I'd already seen before, and my morning's gone.
Yep.
That's what happens. What happens when I'm unsupervised.
When I used to work an office job, I can't tell you how many afternoons I lost to like Wikipedia rabbit holes or YouTube rabbit holes, or we used to do a thing called Fun Fridays because we had a really good team. This was a long time ago. This was probably close to going to be almost 15 years ago now. We had a team where we would get like all of our work for the week done by like Thursday. And then Friday, we would just kind of hang out. We'd take a super long lunch. Mm-hmm. But on Fun Fridays, there was, do you remember the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we would go on and we would try to like find the like biggest chain we could, and like put like 2 actors like Laurence Olivier and Hulk Hogan, and see like how far is the chain between them, and try to stump it and find one where they didn't appear and stuff like that. We would spend a lot of time on doing that. So I get it, man. You get into those rabbit holes, and then that's it. The next thing you know, it's like, oh, it's lunchtime, and then it's like, all right, well, now it's like, after I finish lunch, it's like 1:30, 2 o'clock. I don't really want to start something now.
No, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's close enough to quitting time. But speaking, but we don't have time today. But for a future show, we'll have to talk about that Ethan Strauss article about the work-life balance and everything, and the kind of new reality with, especially of those of us in the sports field, because that was interesting. I think we'll need to discuss that maybe tomorrow or something.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's get into some of the news here. With the big news going on in my world, obviously, was that the Lakers and the Pacers, according to Dave McMenamin, re-engaged on trade talks around Buddy Hield. Obviously, all of this taking place while the Nets are trying to figure out life and what they want to do with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and kind of what's what, and sort through all of that, as they well should. The Lakers are still trying to get the one that got away in Buddy Hield. There's lots of different ways they could go about this, from doing something around Russell Westbrook. McMenamin mentioned could be a bigger trade involving Miles Turner, could be something just involving Buddy Hield, could not involve Russell Westbrook at all. Lots of different paths to get there, but interesting nonetheless that the Lakers and Pacers are starting to have these talks again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Pacers, this would be very much a situation where they'd be acquiring Russell Westbrook, the contract, and not the player, right? Because they're certainly not going to take on him and give him minutes that are going to take away from Tyrese Halliburton or any of their other younger guys. But they're sitting on $30+ million in cap space right now, so they can do an unbalanced trade. They would not have to match salary to get Westbrook. They could straight up do Hield for Westbrook, even though there's a $26 million difference in just between the cap space plus Hield. there it is. There's your trade. Now, presumably, they're going to want probably both first-round picks. I would assume that's probably one for Hield and one for taking on Westbrook's contract. If I'm the Lakers, I probably do it. I would maybe push for.
I would not.
Okay, I would.
I'll explain why in a minute.
I'd see. Hey, what would it take to get Turner involved?
Yeah.
What else could we send you? If there's something else that they want. The challenge for the Lakers is, as we've talked kind of ad nauseum, tradable assets is a hard thing for them to get to because you can't trade any of the guys they just signed. So even if they were like, hey, we really like Lonnie Walker, can't move them. You can't trade them until December 15th. So you're looking to try to get something done now if you're the Lakers. But yeah, I guess my challenge, a couple thoughts on this is Buddy Hield's good. I don't know that he's kind of I think it's being painted a little bit too much of a savior here. I think he definitely helps, would help for sure with his shooting and scoring ability. But then, as weird as this sounds, it leaves the Lakers really kind of without a point guard. And I know everybody's going to say, well, isn't LeBron the point guard? Yeah, on offense, but who's going to defend opposing point guards? Who are you going to put, who's going to be the guy who's going to chase guys around? And I know Westbrook wasn't great defensively last year, but he can still do some stuff defensively at times. He can when he wants to.
Well, that's the key. It's when he wants to.
That's the challenge is how often is he going to want to at his age and situation and everything else. So, I think you still want to go get a point guard there. The pickings are a little slim. I see LeBron and Dennis Schroeder are playing. Did you see
that? Oh my God. Dennis Schroeder basically openly asking LeBron to let him come back was one of the funniest subplots. I meant to talk about it yesterday on the show, but yeah.
I mean, I guess, right? Why not? Especially if you move Westbrook. You can't do that if you have Westbrook still. That would just be a mess. Yep. At that point, I don't, play Austin Reeves 40 minutes a night at point guard over, playing those two anytime out there. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting at least. I think it gives us a sense of, all right, well, maybe there will be something. Let's see, that this, kicks off something. And the other thing this could do is, this could be a little kick in the pants to the Nets to say, hey, we're not going to wait around.
Yes.
And where else are you going to sign Kyrie Irving?
So when I was looking at this, I put this out there on Twitter before any of this Pacers news broke because I was already looking at the shooting abilities of the Lakers or the lack thereof, the concerns there. And I said, you know what? Like the Lakers, they're in enough of a hole in terms of shooting, which they've got some guys where they can be a little bit optimistic that maybe they'll get up to league average. Like Austin Reeves, will he be, instead of 31, 32%, will he be 35% from three next season? They've got a few guys who are in that category, but they're not an Eric Gordon, Buddy Hield away from getting where they want to go.
Yeah.
So then what are you giving up both first to get if that's not going to get you where you want to go? What's the point of doing that? So now if you can rope that into a bigger deal where you're getting Buddy Hield and getting Miles Turner somehow, okay. Right. Then I think you can maybe make an argument that that's enough firepower, or of course in a deal where you're getting Kyrie Irving or something like that. But otherwise, they need shooting, but one shooter isn't going to fix their issues there.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I wonder, he's not a shooter, but would give you the point guard position coverage. What if you took on TJ McConnell in a trade like that? I think that would give you somebody who could, that's 25 minutes of solid point guard play you're going to get. He's not going to be anything special, but he's also not going to hurt you. He's not a, my feelings. Bad shooters are better than complete non-shooters, and he's a non-shooter. He doesn't take jump shots. He doesn't really want to shoot, period, unless it's a layup. But he gives you some defense. He can certainly run an offense and do some stuff. And there's always been a thought of like maybe he could shoot better if he just would. So I guess we could see there. But yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's a reasonable take to say like, yeah, hey, this doesn't solve enough of what our issue is. And yeah, I would certainly much rather do Westbrook and 2 firsts for Kyrie, if that ever does become realistically on the table. And my feeling, because we talked about it a while ago, I would absolutely take back Joe Harris. Like I wouldn't even think twice about that. Like just do it and move on. And Harris, now you've solved point guard and you've solved your shooting issue to a large degree.
Exactly.
Assuming Harris is healthy, right? And I don't know why we think he won't be. I would hope after missing the last half of a year he would be. So let's see where that goes. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. It does signal that the Lakers aren't just going to sit around and wait. So that's something at least.
What do you think would be a better target? We've heard Eric Gordon. His name's been thrown around. Buddy Hield or Eric Gordon?
That's tough. I think probably Eric Gordon. I think I just trust him a little bit more. Buddy Hield's more durable, so that part does matter. I mean, the Lakers already have a lot of guys who might be a good bet to miss 15, 20 games. Eric Gordon's at the point in his career where that's probably not the worst thing if he misses 15 to 20 games, as long as it's not serious injuries, because it keeps him fresh. But yeah, I think Gordon still, though. I think I'd rather go that direction. It's hard, though, because then what else are you taking, right? I guess you could, though. I'm just pulling it up, Houston's roster. I mean, could you take Trey Burke back, too, in that trade? Sterling Brown, because that one is harder because you're going to have to – Gordon only makes $19.5 million, so you're going to have to really start stacking salaries to match there, and they're not sitting on cap space like the Pacers are. So, Boban, maybe? I mean, who doesn't love Boban?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Lakers –
acclaimed actor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Two-time right now.
That's
both
right.
John Wick and Russell. I think if you're the Lakers, if you're going to do that trade, you kind of go into it almost with the same approach Houston did and we're going to have to eat some contracts here just because the Lakers have a relatively full roster at this point. But, Sterling Brown, I guess, he was already there once, right? Wasn't he with the Lakers?
Sterling Brown?
Yeah. Am I making that up?
I don't think so.
Unless I'm thinking of.
Unless I missed something.
Who am I thinking of then?
Are you thinking of Shannon Brown?
Maybe. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, just Milwaukee, Houston, and Dallas. Okay. All right. Well, I was wrong. And Houston again, funny enough. Yeah, so I mean, maybe, you just start stacking some stuff together. You could do one heck of a camp competition too, and then say, hey, play it out. And then we'll waive some guys at the end and move on. But yeah, that's the only challenge with the Gordon one is you just got to stack so many salaries coming your way that you're going to have to eat some money. But that's not the end of it. I mean, you're kind of going to eat $47 million of Russell Westbrook.
That's right.
Why not eat, maybe $20 million of other guys?
Darvin Ham has outlaid his plan for Russell Westbrook. That's a story to get into another day, but you'll get a kick out of it when we do have time to get into that. Let's jump over to the Warriors. The NBA has fined Joe Lacob $500,000 for saying that he doesn't like the luxury tax system, saying that it is unfair.
Technically, the fine is for unauthorized communications regarding collective bargaining.
Right. So, I mean, and I don't know exactly what he said about collective bargaining. I know the quote that's been going around is that he doesn't like the luxury tax system. Maybe the luxury tax system is becoming more punitive or something, and that's what he's talking about being unfair. But, I mean, in any event, this is a big fine. This is a pretty big fine being levied on this Warriors team. But I think this is also maybe a little bit of pushback because there have been all these talks about, is this good for the NBA that the Warriors just outspent everybody and won a championship, and you've got, the Warriors and the Clippers are able to spend, and it doesn't put a dent in a guy like say Steve Ballmer, doesn't put a dent in his wallet, whereas other teams are not in that situation. Do they want that kind of a system? Isn't the CBA trying to prevent that type of thing? And now he's saying, well, yeah, but we're getting hit by these luxury taxes and these aren't fair. And so there's probably a little bit of pushback there, but it is interesting from the team that just won a championship in part by being willing to spend. And again, to their credit, they were willing to spend. Some teams should spend and aren't willing to, but that they're pushing back against these luxury taxes.
Yeah, it's tough. I wrote about this for Spot Track. I wrote a whole thing about, is it really bad? And my spoiler alert, I mean, I do encourage everybody to go check it out. Is the Golden State Warriors spending really bad for the NBA? That's up on Spot Track right now. It's been up for about a week. I don't think it is, because the Warriors have mostly spent to retain their own players.
Yeah.
Which is, what are they supposed to do? Say, sorry, gotta go. I know we developed you, we drafted you, we got you there. We gotta let you go. And to be fair, yeah, some teams definitely do that. And to be fair, it does seem like we're getting maybe to that point with the Warriors. Joe Lacob has talked about keeping both Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole past this season. May not be tenable. It may be something they have to make a decision on there. Or could they make another decision and move a guy like Klay Thompson? Maybe. I know that seems kind of unfathomable given his long run with the Warriors, but they've got roster decisions to make for sure. And they made a couple tough ones this year. They didn't pay to keep Gary Payton II. They could have matched what he got from Portland without issue. They didn't pay to keep Otto Porter Jr. They could have given him their full taxpayer mid-level. That was more than he got from the Raptors. So now, in fairness to the Warriors, they've got kids ready to step in place of those guys. They did sign Dante DiVincenzo for far less money than Peyton got to kind of replace him functionally in their rotation. So I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with it, because it's been, in the vast majority of it's been to save their players or recycling the salary slot that was created when the cap jumped. And that's how they got Kevin Durant. So I don't know. I struggle with that one, but hitting him with this fine, perfectly fair. As you said, full disclosure, neither one of us have listened to the podcast. I think it was on Draymond Green's podcast. I think if it was, he doesn't listen to our podcast, so we're not going to listen to his. If you do, Draymond, let us know. I mean, I guess I'm not sure, but
he could.
If you do, let us know.
He should.
We'll start downloading and listening to your show too. But anyway, it's I mean, it's I get it, right? It's the NBA. Anytime anybody talks about the CBA talks outside of what's being published by the league or the NBPA, they're going to drill them pretty hard on it, and it's it is what it is.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. The Warriors, they spent a little more money. They signed Mack McClung. Obviously not going to be a super expensive contract here. Non-guaranteed deal. See if he can stick in training camp. But it's not a two-way contract or anything like that, which is what he's been getting in the past. So this is a chance, after looking really good in Summer League, for him to potentially stick on an NBA roster. We talked a little bit about Mack yesterday, about him being that, what did you call him? Not a AAA guy. You call him quadruple A? 4A player, guy who's probably a little bit too good for the G League, but maybe not quite good enough to stick on an NBA roster. Well, again, we'll see. He looked really good in Summer League, so maybe he can battle his way in.
Yeah, and this is also not an Exhibit 10 contract, which, just education real quick, in Exhibit 10, you're going to see tons of those signed over the next couple months here leading up to camp. And what those are fully non-guaranteed deals with language where the player gets a bonus if they then go and play in the G League. After being waived by the NBA team, they get a little extra money for doing that. So we're going to see a ton of those signed. We've already seen probably about 10 or 12. We're probably going to get close to 50, 60, 70 total. We'll get signed. Probably end up over 100, because what some teams do is they'll sign 2, then they'll waive the guys to get their affiliate player rights for the G League. We'll do a whole thing on that when it's happening, because we'll explain some of those moves when we get there. But it's just roster movement to build your best G League roster, as more and more teams are prioritizing the G League as a real thing for developing players. So I think, but the Warriors with McClung and then JaMychal Green, who was officially waived by the Thunder today, so he'll clear waivers on Friday. Look at that. This guy,
ready to go.
This is a professional program right there.
For those listening to the podcast version, I put up the JaMychal Green graphic, so that nothing too crazy going on here. But that was.
But it's they are. He was officially waived today. He'll clear waivers on Friday. Presumably, no one's going to claim him. It's only the Pacers, Spurs, and I believe the Jazz that even have the ability. And clearly, none of those 3 teams are going to do that. So he'll join the Warriors. So with McClung and Green, they're only up to 13 total players on the roster. So definitely still room there for Golden State to do some stuff. So we'll see where that goes moving forward. But yeah, I think McClung has a decent chance of sticking. And Hey, they did really great work with Gary Payton and got him to
Yeah,
be a very good NBA player. So, maybe they can do the same with McClung.
another former Laker, just like
Yeah.
Gary Payton II.
The whole dynasty just built on the backs of former Lakers.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's funny because some people were saying, "Oh, look at the Lakers just picking up another Warriors player." Last year was Kent Bazemore, now
Oh yeah,
Anderson, and now you've got the Warriors picking up Gary Payton II and Mack McClung. It's just we've got this.
it's an easy move, right? You just right up to 5.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Simple. It makes the travel easy.
Yep.
It's one of those situations. James Harden finally agrees. In my head, this box was already checked. Like James Harden is going back to the 76ers, but you noted that there's some things in the contract there maybe a little bit different than what we expected in Harden's new deal with the Sixers. So what's going on there?
It took slightly more money than what they initially had said he might take in year 1 of the contract. Not a ton, no major differences here, but he took about 33 million. There was talks of him taking maybe only 32, maybe 32 and a half. To me, that says maybe something fell through that Philly might have been working on somewhere. But the Sixers, they're $3 million under the hard cap. That should be more than enough wiggle room for them to do what they need to do. They'll probably even gain a little bit more because they've got some non-guaranteed guys who they count against the hard cap until they're waived. But because they're non-guaranteed, they'll have to do that. They are going to have to waive at least one of those players to just get into roster compliance for the start of the year. So they should be fine. They'll be somewhere between 3 and 5 million under the hard cap. That's more than enough wiggle room to go into the season with. To if somebody gets hurt and you have to sign a player, or you want to make a imbalanced trade where you're bringing in a little more money than you're sending out, that should give them the room to do that.
Yes, yeah, indeed. So
and a player option for Harden, which I think we already knew on year 2. So he'll opt out after this year, and then he'll go right back up to the full max amount next year, presumably, unless he's kind of locked in at this point of like, hey, I'll always take a little less to try to help us out with building out the roster.
And we talked about this when the trade went down to send Harden to Philly. We said, oh, the problem is you're going to pay him, and then he's going to be on a 5-year deal or whatever. And then by the end of that contract, that's going to be looking pretty bad. Looks like Philly figured out a way to dodge that bullet, and maybe that's just credit to the relationship between Daryl Morey and James Harden. This is looking much, much better for the 76ers than it did just a few months ago.
And, I mean, it's the middle of July, getting towards the end of July, but you got to love the stuff he's saying of, right, like, last year wasn't good enough. I got to come back better. Now he did couch it with, I was still pretty good. But it's like, yeah, but you weren't James Harden, right? So, let's see. I mean, even him just being slightly better makes them a much scarier team.
For sure.
That's, they're going to be tough, this year, provided they stay healthy and Harden gets things on track. It's going to be, a really good team in the East.
All right. The Utah Jazz have been looking at moving Mike Conley. We know that they're going to try to move a number of guys as soon as the Donovan Mitchell trade is completed. You've got guys like Jordan Clarkson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Patrick Beverley, Mike Conley as well. These are all guys that are probably going to wind up getting moved. You can add Rudy Gay into the mix. They'll move on from a lot of these guys if they can and see what they can get in return. But the market for Mike Conley in particular has not been, existent, really. Turns 35 here and didn't have a great season last year. Has a decent chunk of guaranteed money for next season, which I mean is, I guess, better than fully guaranteed, but still, I want to say it's about $14 million guaranteed.
Yeah, and when you say next season, that's not, we're already thinking this season is the one that starts in a few months. So yeah, it's the season after. Yeah, he's about 14 million of 24 million is guaranteed for him.
Right, which is enough to where it's not like it's 2 million or 3 million or something, and you're like, oh, no big deal. We'll just not.
Yeah, those ones are functionally expiring. This one is not.
This is not. This is a very different situation. So I can understand why the trade market might not be too robust for a guy like Mike Conley, particularly when you look around the NBA and you see how many teams really need point guards right now, or need a veteran point guard. Not many.
Yeah, and. But it's funny because I saw someone at some point was like, wouldn't this make sense for the Lakers to look at Conley for Westbrook? And I mean, maybe, but it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation. Is that going to lift you? Because the Russell Westbrook contract for this season is kind of your last best thing to get something that's really going to help you. this year, maybe going forward. Conley, I think I'd probably rather have Conley. I'm not even a probably. I'd rather have Conley than Westbrook on the Lakers right now.
For sure.
But what's that take you from 6th to 4th in the West? Like, is that going to take you to 1st, 2nd, challenging for the finals? I don't know. I mean, he's really lost it defensively. Gobert covered for him a lot. The Lakers don't exactly have that presence. AD is good, but he's not Gobert level good all the time anymore. So that's a challenge. So yeah, I don't know. It's just tough. I would be trying to aim higher, I guess, if I was the Lakers in that one. But yeah, but beyond them, you really do start looking around. It's like, who needs point guards, right? There's just nobody jumps off the page as like, boy, they really need to go get a point guard.
That's where if you do a Mike Conley and somebody for Russell Westbrook, because there's going to be a discrepancy there in the salaries.
If you could do like Conley and Bogdanovich or something like that, I mean, I'd be all over that. The problem is the Lakers aren't going to have the Russ and 2 first-round picks. I don't know if that's going to be enough for Danny Ainge. Right, like he's gonna be looking for. I want a first-round pick for each of those guys, and then I want a pick for eating Russ's contract. So that's where the Lakers would have to make up that imbalance somewhere.
Which I can't see anybody giving a first-round pick for Mike Conley. Not at this stage. But I agree. That's what Danny Ainge is going to ask for everything, and that's why if I'm the Lakers, I'm looking elsewhere to deal.
Just continue to sit tight. Yeah. And you know what, too? If the Jazz have to go into the season still with Conley and another veteran, maybe that's a trade you look at later, right? You could, if you hit the holidays and it's like, all right, this isn't working, we have to move on from Russ, then maybe that is a trade you make. And by that point, maybe Ainge says, all right, you know what, give me 1 first and 3 seconds or something. Let's throw in one of your kids that's now tradable that you don't really need or something like that. We'll figure it out from there.
All right, last thing we've got before we get into a team breakdown here. Andrew Nembhard gets a 4-year deal with the Pacers. He was the first pick of the 2nd round in the draft. Obviously, there's a little bit of excitement about him, but this is what you should do with 2nd rounders. Figure out a way to give them a long-term deal, because then you get the potential upside. Very minimal risk if it doesn't work out. Small contract, no big deal. But
you sound like the Lakers fans in my Twitter mentions.
Yeah. Right? Like, hey, maybe this is just something you should generally do, so you do have some upside towards the last few years of that contract. But good move for the Pacers. I like it.
Yeah, Jonathan Givony tweeted this out from ESPN Draft Express. Tweeted, the deal guarantees $6.4 million in the first 3 years for Nembhard, the most ever for a collegiate 2nd rounder. Now, we've seen that's a good clarification there, because we've seen some guys get picked and then signed 2-3 years later out of Europe that have made more money. But in this case, coming right out of college. And then Bobby Marks noted has more guaranteed money than picks 18 through 30 in the first round, and allows Nembhard to hit free agency possibly in 1 less year. One of the best 2nd round contracts that he's ever seen. So it's just, that's great work by the Pacers, right? And you plug him in behind Tyrese Haliburton and TJ McConnell. He's got enough size. You can probably play. So does Haliburton. You can probably play all sorts of different combos with those guys together, with Mathurin and Buddy Hield and all that. And let's see what it is. Pacer. It's so funny. They're probably going to be bad this year, but I am infinitely more interested in watching the Pacers now than I probably have been in any of the last 3 seasons.
Is it, how much of that is Mathurin?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Him,
right?
Haliburton. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to watch those 2 guys. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to watch when they play the Lakers for the first time, because I get to see LeBron prove it to Mathurin that he's better than him.
All right. Let's get into our team breakdown today. I don't think this is going to be a lengthy one, because it's the Chicago Bulls. And the Bulls are pretty simple this offseason. I guess really it all starts with Zach LaVine. They were able to hang on to him. 5-year deal. We always thought that this was probably going to become the outcome here, and but the Bulls get it done. They hang on to Zach LaVine. Hopefully he can stay healthy, and that's a hefty chunk of change. But he's a very, very, very good player too. And then remember, this is the team that had everybody's attention in the first half last season, and then injuries really caught up with them. And so they've got to be hoping that they'll have a little bit better injury luck this next season, and they can kind of recapture that buzz that they had around them in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really liked what Levine said recently in an interview where he said, look, I asked for the max. I asked for 5 years.
Yeah.
I asked for this. And the Bulls gave it to me. He was asked, why he didn't take any other meetings. And he said it would have been disrespectful to take other meetings. So when they gave me everything I asked for, at that point, yeah, I think he's right. It does feel a little disrespectful to be like, oh, you're going to give me everything. Let me go talk to this other team. Right. Like, and what else are we doing here? So, yeah, I mean, that locks him up long term. He's still young enough that 5 years gives me no worry at all for him, minus as long as the knee gets right.
Yeah, the injuries, right.
And he does say he's feeling great, and we've seen video of him going through off-season workouts. It's not an off-season thing, but it's worth addressing it here. Can't say the same for Lonzo Ball. A little bit scary. Arturas Karnisovich came out and said he's not progressing at the speed the Bulls would like, and basically said no guarantee he'll be ready for opening night. So that's worrisome, because now you're talking that's a 6-month plus injury now for something where, remember, initially it was he'd probably be back for the start of the playoffs.
Right.
And that's, to your point, injuries ruined this team's season last year. First half of the year, yeah, they were right there. Them at Miami were kind of back and forth, 1-2 in the East, and then the injuries really hit them. And I gotta believe this is why they didn't dip into any of that backcourt depth and start trading guys like Kobe White yet or anything like that, because I think the Bulls were probably thinking we might need these guys to at least open the year, because we don't know if we're gonna have Lonzo ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. That was something that was out there, that they would eventually move on from Kobe White. But again, if these injuries are lingering with Lonzo, you can't really do that if you're the Bulls. And I think that's part of why, you look at their offseason, you're like, oh, they didn't do a ton, but it's because all that's up in the air. And so they, maybe this could wind up being a team that makes a big move midseason. A trade deadline team. They do bring back Derek Jones Jr., who's just fine. Obviously he'd be much more valuable if he could shoot, but still gives you some athleticism on the wing.
Now he's kind of very properly paid, if maybe even a little underpaid, right? At about
he used to be overpaid, but now it's about right. He's fun to watch. He's super springy and all of that. And then you go and you bring in Andre Drummond as your backup 5 behind Vucevic. So
Drummond,
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, he was good enough when he was traded to Brooklyn, where you could say, okay, like you could see the way some things could work. Ideally, you would have more of a proper rim protector than Drummond, but he's not. I think he can still give you some stuff there off the bench for the Bulls.
Yeah, I think we are both of similar mindset. Like me with Celtics fans clamored after him as a trade target for years. Then you actually got him for a few months of a season. I think we're of similar mindset that Andre Drummond as a starter, not probably a lower end starter, right? You're probably 25 to 30 in starter ranks. As a backup, though, it's probably one of the top 3 to 5 backup centers in the league, maybe. I'd have to give it more thought, but that feels rightish to me, just kind of off the top of my head. And I think that's important here for the Bulls for 2 reasons. One is if anything happens to Vucevic, you're not going to really fall apart, because your only other option then are Tony Bradley, or then you're really dipping into maybe a 10-day signing or something weird, or really playing small. They tried Tristan Thompson last year. That was a mess and not good. Drummond, I think, is certainly better than Tristan Thompson is at this point. Plus, if you made a move where Vooch is kind of your big trade chip,
correct,
maybe then you could say, all right, hey, we can slide Drummond in because we got better enough at the 4 or something like that, where Drummond can come in here and play for him. And then in that guard mix too, Goran Dragic is going to join the party here as well. Eventually, he has not officially signed yet, but it doesn't sound like there's anything going on with that other than he's trying to decide if he's going to play for Slovenia or not in Eurobasket this summer. So we'll see what he does there. But just another guy thrown in, and that to me says if and when Lonzo gets back, see a Kobe White. He's gonna get packaged in a deal, because they're not gonna pay him. And at that point, you're talking he's behind what? He'd be behind Lonzo, he'd be behind Dragic, he'd be behind Ayo Dosunmu, be behind Alex Caruso, obviously. Like you're, in that mix there, the guard mix, not even to mention Levine and at the two, DeRozan at the two, if you go a little bit bigger, like all that stuff, like at that point, it's see you later, Kobe White.
That's where. And by the way, this Goran Dragic landing with the Bulls, that was a major curveball because everybody was assuming he was going to the Mavs.
Yep.
And then that didn't materialize. But
I think the Mavs too thought he was going to the Mavs.
Yeah, it was a shock. But I think this is when I'm looking at this roster. I think we could very well see a Kobe White Vucevic package around the trade deadline to get the Bulls an upgrade somewhere. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that duo wound up getting shopped around.
Yeah, that's $30 million in salary basically to send out. And I didn't even talk about Dalen Terry yet, who's another player coming in, another guy in the guard mix for Chicago. Right now, there's no minutes for him at all. So he's going to be doing a lot of developing with the Windy City Bulls of the G League there. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It would not surprise me at all if they're active, moving guys around. They did use part of their non-taxpayer mid-level to sign Drummond to his contract, and then they've got about $7.3 million left, but they're only about $3.5 million under the tax line. And much to the chagrin of Bulls fans, who will very much let you know on Twitter if you ask, they hate it, but they know they're not going to go into the tax. Like it's just not something they do. What you see is what you get unless you start making trades. Hung on to Patrick Williams still, right?
Yep.
So it's not the worst thing in the world that they've kept him around.
Fingers crossed, stay healthy.
Yep, stay healthy. He showed some stuff too after he got back from injury late in the year. Returned for a little while there, it looked like he wasn't gonna. And he did get back on the court. So yeah, get Lonzo back, and this starts to become that fun, interesting team from the beginning part of last year. Without Lonzo, they're probably middle of the pack in the East.
Yep, agreed. We'll see if they can recapture some of that fun running and gunning Bulls team that we saw at the beginning of the season. But Keith, I think that about does it for today. I need to get back to Miss Marvel. I'm on episode 4 now because I've been able to fly through a bunch of them, while I've had this time. So I'm gonna try to get through a few more of those. But good talking NBA with you as always, and I'm enjoying these team breakdowns. I think we got to try to keep squeezing these into the end of our episodes.
Yeah, and guys, the plan is we're going to try to get all 30 in, well in advance of flipping them from reviews to previews. But we're going to try to get these in, and on the days when it's a little lighter, we might try to do 1 or 2 of them, or these are ones too where the challenge is right now. We were going through it tonight. There's about 7 or 8 teams where it's kind of like, I don't feel good about doing theirs yet because they might do X. But the teams that mostly seem like they're probably done are, we'll do them. And you know what? You guys know by now, if the Bulls make a Donovan Mitchell trade or they're the team that trades for KD, we'll come back and we'll talk about it and break it all down probably in painstaking detail with that. So we'll get into it that way. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm excited to really start turning the corner. And all right, well, what did we do here? Let's pick up the pieces, because some of these as we get into them, I'll be kind of like, and I'm like, oh yeah, they did that too. I kind of forgot.
That's right, because everything was such a blur in that condensed period, which. Again, I want to get into that more when we talk about that Ethan Strauss article. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. But don't forget, guys, go check out our Front Office Show Clips channel. I'll put a link in the description below over on YouTube. You can go check out the short form content there. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Till next time, stay safe and see ya.